There were tons of inappropriate relationship dynamics on Gossip Girl, but the one between Dan Humphrey and Rachel Carr was probably one of the worst. That's because Dan was a high school student, while Rachel was his teacher. At first, their connection was totally innocent before it blew up into something that was incredibly wild. But some avid Gossip Girl fans who've been rewatching the show are starting to poke holes into just how far from innocent this connection was before they started hooking up. It turns out that Rachel's approach with Dan was actually pretty sleazy, even before they took it to the next level. As a reminder, Rachel and Dan didn't have sex until she was convinced she was completely fired from her teaching position at Constance Billard. But before that intimate moment happened, she was already shamelessly flirting with Dan in a way that was beyond tasteless. She came across as an innocent young teacher from a small town who was overwhelmed by the big and scary dynamics of New York City. Rachel also came across like she was holier than thou, dealing with the entitled, spoiled, bratty rich kids of the Upper East Side. At one point, she made a creepy comment to Dan saying something along the lines of, "If you were 5 years older." And she allowed Dan to comfort her when she was sad, as if he was an age-appropriate romantic suitor rather than her much younger student. Even if Rachel and Dan didn't fully have sex before she was fired from Constance Billard, her actions were still completely out of line. Dan was definitely flirting with Rachel, but that was to be expected since he was a teenage boy who had a crush. No one can be upset with Dan for pushing the limits to see how far he could get with Rachel. Rachel was supposed to be the adult in the situation, and she allowed attention from Dan to flatter her in a way that led them down the wrong road. One social media user posted, "If it was my son and his teacher or any staff member in his school, I'd be gunning for blood. She is an adult, in a position of authority. She is at minimum in her early 20s, but most likely older. The fact that she technically wasn't teaching him when the affair begins is clutching at the thinnest of straws. Her behavior towards her students treads the line between that of a caring teacher and wildly inappropriate. You can see how much of a positive influence she is on Serena, but by that same measure, you can also see how great her influence is on Dan and how she uses that influence to keep him at bay. Her age and position require her to be the mature adult. She should be expected to put the welfare of her students above her own wants, and the fact that she doesn't do this and proceeds to continue the affair with Dan is problematic." What are your thoughts on Rachel and Dan's inappropriate student-teacher affair? Does it still bother you like it's bothering other Gossip Girl fans? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.